Want to use a PGR in wheat, durum, oats, or barley but don't have time for a separate pass? With Manipulator PGR, you can spray from one tiller up to early flag leaf, so add it to the tank with your herbicide and save the extra time. Manipulator PGR shortens the crop and strengthens stems to reduce lodging risk, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Ask your local crop protection retail to make a plan today.
Good day, and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, April the 10th. On this episode of The Word, it's go time, baby! Hey, we are so lucky. We just have to remember that. Then I'm going to talk about winter canola, winter wheat, rye, and some specific questions at the end, depending on how much time I can get to stuff. Let's go! Yes, it is go time. The field work is underway in a massive way here in southwestern Ontario. There is alfalfa that's been planted. There's manure going out. Be careful with that, man. Compaction, it looks dry on the surface. Lots of times it's wet underneath. But nonetheless, yes, lots going on. Nitrogen on wheat. It's go time. Get it done while you can. No question about that. And we are so incredibly lucky from that perspective. It remains unbelievably wet in the UK, in Belgium, across much of Europe. Talking to some growers who are in Belgium, they say in the wheat fields there, the tracks from applying nitrogen, early nitrogen, are right full of water. Wait a minute. Everybody knows how much wheat likes wet feet. And really good data around wheat from that. Just the more waterlogged it is, the lower the yield potential. So tough going over in that part of the world. Meanwhile, here it is go, go, go. Just make sure it's fit, because whenever it's this time of year, it's just, especially on clay soils, it's never as dry as you think it is. So be a tad careful. Okay, the other thing that I want to mention is the solar eclipse that we had on Monday. And whether you paid attention or not, it was amazing how dark it got, even if you didn't have the eclipse glasses and looked up to see what was happening in the sky, which was quite incredible, by the way. But I heard a comment, and I think it is so true and so appropriate, that as much as we have all the strife going on and the vitriol, I continue to be frustrated with the vitriol that gets tossed at politicians and people in general when they just, let's have respectable conversations. But the comment was that solar eclipse, everyone in those large crowds, when that was happening, they were all together. They were all in awe of nature, and all of that vitriol was forgotten. And man, I wish we could just take a step back and realize the incredible power that nature has and enjoy that a little bit more and fire at people a little bit less. I do get frustrated. Okay, going to get down off my let's get along pulpit. And by the way, the phone system, I can't believe it. For 2 weeks now, not one message coming in on the phone system. That's not to say I'm not getting messages. It's just that the people that normally leave me phone messages, you must be busy making maple syrup or something like that, because nothing happened there. Okay, I want to move on. And I just want to mention that, wow, just about everywhere, the winter wheat crop is looking excellent, but we really notice it in particular in eastern Ontario. And I think that's because they have such amazing agronomists. My great friend, Gilles Cannell, texted me pictures of winter wheat from eastern Ontario. The field looked amazing. The plants were well tillered. Not 2 minutes after that, Warren Schneckenberger, also from the eastern Ontario area, sent me some pictures. Paul Sullivan saying the crop looks great. You don't have to go back that far that winter wheat simply did not work very well in Eastern Ontario, but it was often an icing issue over the winter. They had much more winter kill problems. That's just a simple change in the climate, that things are working better in that part of the world. And they have great agronomists there. If you have great agronomists like Gilles Cannell, Paul Sullivan, yep, you can learn how to grow amazing wheat from that perspective. Okay, I want to talk quickly about winter canola and the differences. So I will be scouting winter canola this year, and I am astounded because the winter canola I'm scouting is planted much too late. It was mid-September. We really did not expect it to survive. Gosh, there are some weak spots in the field, a few holes, if you will. But in most of the field, it's almost too thick. So sometimes you can do things wrong and get away with it. Meanwhile, Mike in Simcoe County saying his winter canola, he planted some August 24th, he planted some September the 7th, and the difference in winter survival is massive. Now, Mike's further north, shorter season. I get it. September the 7th in that part of the world is really too late. But sometimes we get away with those things. His August 24th winter canola, much better. And I will say, for everyone listening, I really think winter canola has the potential to be a fourth crop in our rotation. I think that has massive benefits. But don't forget, if you want to play in this game, you actually have to order the seed by, I believe the date is June the 15th. It's C&M Seeds. You'll have to check there. But if you're going to play in this game, if you want to try some, get the seed ordered soon, like right away, so that they can get it in place and just have a bit of fun with it, see how it fits in your rotation. But yes, it's definitely much better than what I expected it would be. And I'm going to get to scout winter canola. That's cool. By the way, Dan in Idaho also tweeting back to my winter canola tweet that his winter canola has just come out from under the snow. Gosh, it's small, but it does look like the stand is there sufficient that he will have a crop even in Idaho. So that's kind of cool. All right, I want to move on back to the wheat crop and say, oh my gosh, all winter long, particularly February, right? What did we talk about? Warm, dry, unbelievable. Well, guess what? As of April the 8th, I had Brandon, a new agronomist in Kent County, Chatham, Kent, send me a picture of wheat at growth stage 30. That means it's gone reproductive. The head is there. It's moving up the stem. April the 8th. And you just go, man. And then it wasn't a day later, I think, Mark up at Ripley, Bruce County, along the lake, sends a picture as well of wheat. It wasn't quite as advanced, but you could see the head in the plant at the crown. So the head has formed. It's gone reproductive. That is incredibly early, much earlier than normal. And by the way, the other thing I just want to mention, so cool, just so cool that growers are out in the field and cutting plants open and looking to see what stage they're at and trying to manage this wheat crop. So hats off to people like Dennis Pennington and Joanne Fallings and the Yen Project and just people are managing wheat, understanding wheat, and doing such a better job than we have done in the past. This, by the way, happened in 2012. 2012 was also super warm spring, but there was almost nobody out there cutting these plants open and seeing that. So just where are we at? Because lots of growers saying, okay, Johnson, like we're ahead of normal. So okay, like are we going to combine wheat the last week of June? Okay, full stop. Let's look at it. What's really interesting is Joanna Fallings, good for her, has been tracking growing degree days. That's how you track wheat development since the 1st of January. And from the 1st of January till April the 7th, we're somewhere between 30 and 100 growing degree days ahead of normal. 30 down in the Windsor area, 100 ahead when we move out to the Ottawa area. And you say, well, what does that mean in terms of crop development? Well, on early planted advanced wheat, it takes about 250 growing degree days for it to go to grow stage 30, where it actually turns reproductive. And gosh, at Ridgetown on April the 8th, I think it was 258 or something like that growing degree days. So Brandon, right on target from that perspective. But if you're 100 ahead in Eastern Ontario, and that's ahead of, by the way, of 2023, that's not ahead of the 10-year average. So my 30 to 100 growing degree days ahead of 2023, when we look at the 10-year average, we are 150 growing degree days ahead of the 10-year average. So now when you say 250 growing degree days to get there, if we're 150 ahead of average, that's massive. So we get about 10 to 12 growing degree days per day this time of year. So if you're in Windsor and only 30 ahead of last year, that's about 2 to 3 days ahead of last year. You're still 150 ahead of the 10-year average. So that's big. That's 150 is what? 12 days, 14 days, maybe even as many as 15 days. So yes, really, really advanced. What does that mean in terms of combine date? I'm taking too long on this, but the bottom line is there is a lot of weather to happen between April the 10th and harvest. So will it be an early year? Almost for sure, yes, just where we're at. Will we be 2 weeks ahead of average as we are right now? That's a good question. It will depend on the weather between now and then. But if you're looking at planning your holidays, wheat harvest may well be early. There's no doubt about that. On that note, by the way, Lawrence tweeting out a picture saying, there's no wonder that wheat is so good for soil health. Look at the root growth on this wheat crop. And yet, Lawrence, absolutely, we do get great root mass, and wheat is good in the rotation from a soil health perspective. Woody saying, okay, Pete, so what is the right time to put on a plant growth regulator? And the answer, Woody, is absolutely at growth stage 30. That's when the first one should be applied if you can. Now, I better back up just for a second and say that is only the early planted wheat. The late planted wheat is nowhere close. My own wheat planted the first week of October still has a ways to go to get growth stage 30. And if you planted wheat in November, my gosh, it's only got 2 or 3 leaves at this stage. So be careful when I talk about this advanced wheat from that perspective. Make sure you go out and look. But yep, plant growth regulators, growth stage 30 is when we target if we could. But you know, it's not that you got to get there at 30. There's a big window all the way up to 39, which is flag leaf stage. Best if we can get it on growth stage 30, 31, 32. The earlier you do it, the better it actually works. But remember, you don't always need a plant growth regulator. It depends on your variety, on the planting date, on all those things. So this is not to suggest every acre needs plant growth regulators. Okay, next, Tom asking, can we put the herbicide on now? Are the temperatures right? Wow, again, unbelievably warm. Whenever we have above 3 Celsius at night for 3 days and you can get that herbicide put on the middle day, you're solid. And even if we're above 0, typically we don't see any phytotoxicity. You might get a wee bit less weed control, but it's generally good enough. So if you have weeds out there that need controlled, the dandelions, in Tom's case, it's purple dead nettle. By the way, it is an early whitlow grass year. I have seen more whitlow grass this year in wheat fields than I've seen for, a decade. And I've also had many other growers and agronomists ask me, what is this weed? Haven't seen this before. We'll put a picture in the post. It's not a grass at all, and it is not very competitive. But the problem with not controlling weeds like this, and it's going to be really hard to control, it's already in flower, it's already setting seed, so you need to get there immediately. The problem is if you let it go to seed, it just continues to build as a problem. And so I really like to control these weeds when we can. If you have whitlow grass, it's probably a sandy farm. You probably also have chickweed. And so anything that controls chickweed typically will control whitlow grass. But yeah, it is a whitlow grass year. There's no doubt about that. And why environments end up being more conducive to the weed growth of certain weeds each year? I don't understand, but man, it is a whitlow grass year, and we have had this window of opportunity. I hope it keeps up, because the dandelions aren't even in flower yet in most fields. Gives you a chance to kill them this spring before they actually do much yield damage. But the time is now, go. If you don't get it done now, they're going to get big, hard to control, and the yield impact will already have happened. Lots of nitrogen going on wheat as well, and that is correct. So I did earlier in the week, I had lots of tweets and texts asking me, because there was significant rain in the forecast. There was an inch of rain forecast for Wednesday, another inch of rain forecast for Saturday, for example. And growers asking me, do we risk putting the nitrogen on from a loss perspective? So first off, good that you're thinking about that. This is awesome that it's on our radar screen. But remember two things. Number one, it takes quite a bit of moisture before we get much loss of the nitrogen. Leaching, it takes a lot. And denitrification, we need a length of time of wet weather. Plus, it's dry. We're doing tillage in the field. So the first inch that happens, all that happens is that it moves that nitrogen into the soil so that the wheat crop can use it. Now, in Ohio, they've actually had up to 6 inches of rain. If you put nitrogen on and you get 6 inches of rain and we stay warm and it stays wet, you will lose nitrogen through denitrification. But it takes, a few days of that warm, saturated conditions. You get an inch of rain on Wednesday, you get another inch on Saturday. Well, that first inch a lot of that has drained through the soil, so now we're not as wet again. And I really think if you wait for the perfect day, you're never going to put nitrogen on. So I'm glad to see the amount of nitrogen going out that there is. I hope most producers are split applying nitrogen. It reduces your lodging risk. It's an environmental win. It may not make you more yield, but there are reasons to do it. There's no question about that. Alex tweeting out that he wished he would have kept going. He put his nitrogen on his canola March 21st. He had some left over. He put it on his wheat field. And gosh, that wheat where he put the nitrogen on looks so much better. He wishes he kept going. Just because it looks better now doesn't mean it yields more. But my other point would be, we're early. We're growth stage 30 on those advanced wheat fields. When does the high demand for nitrogen kick in? Right at growth stage 30, 31, when we hit that rapid growth phase. And so one of the challenges with saying, I normally only start putting nitrogen on April the 13th. Well, gosh, the wheat crop is at least 3 days, maybe as much as 15 days ahead of normal in development. So looking at the calendar for an application date simply does not work. Hey, the other thing I want to just mention quickly is yen has really driven growers to manage that wheat. I talked about that, but keep realistic yield goals. So Brian sent me his yen strategy, his wheat management strategy. I was ever so happy to see that he was only at 150 pounds of nitrogen, 20 pounds of sulfur, on soft red winter wheat in the province of Ontario and likely in Michigan and the surrounding Great Lakes region. That's about the top end. There's almost never much yield boost past 150 pounds of nitrogen, so that's good. On the other hand, wow, does management pay? So Brent and Bennett, they had struggled with their wheat crop for a few years. They brought Johnson in. We started to look at tweaking their management. I walked their wheat, and by the way, their wheat is on some very, very tough clay hills. I have rarely seen such a beautiful, uniform wheat crop, so kudos to Brent and Bennett. They have taken management to the next level on their farms, and that's what the wheat crop likes. There's no doubt about that. Okay, 3 last things before I run out of time, or I'm already out of time, but watch stripe rust. It's moving north quickly. Andrew, you talked about nitrogen on your rye crop and 100 pounds of nitrogen. You're going to soybeans after. You know, rye can use a lot more than that. In fact, Tom Kilser, when he talks about triticale, to get protein in triticale, he talks about 180 or 200 pounds of nitrogen. I would push the nitrogen a little harder. I think easily 120 of nitrogen, and the rye will use it. It won't affect the soybean crop and nodulation after. Preston, you asked about low organic matter and sulfur on soybeans, and Preston's basic question was, you know, I have 2% organic matter on my sand knolls. Is that low? To me, if on a sand soil, if you're at 2%, you're okay. Anything less than 2%, I think you're getting low, and I would worry about it. But the big question is, have you ever seen soybeans on those knolls go off color? If you have, I would consider sulfur. If not, I would consider a trial. But that's all. And Kevin, thin wheat, saying, is this herbicide residue? What's going on? I got on my sand knolls, I have killed out spots. I fire it back. What's the pH? What was the previous crop? Previous crop, alfalfa. Sand knolls, alfalfa, it's almost for sure a wireworm issue. The wireworms ate the seed or killed the plant before it emerged, and that's exactly what happened. They never did emerge. I think that is the problem. And with that, I'm way over time. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, April the 10th. Hey, keep the questions coming, keep the comments coming, and get the work done, but be safe. Talk to you next week.